the truth about love and attachment, the illusion of love, why we confuse love with attachment. Hook. What if the love you're holding on to isn't actually love? What if the thing you call love is the very source of your anxiety, your overthinking, and your sleepless nights? Think about it. That constant urge to check your phone, that sinking feeling when they don't text back, that fear that one day they might just walk away. We've all felt it, and we've all called it love. But what if it isn't? Introduction. From the moment we're young, we're taught a very specific version of love. Movies tell us that love is intense, that it's all-consuming, that it's something you can't live without. You complete me. I can't breathe without you. You're my everything. It sounds romantic until you actually experience it. Because when you build your world around another person, what happens when they change, when they pull away, when they leave? Suddenly, love doesn't feel beautiful anymore. It feels like fear, like insecurity, like something you're constantly trying to hold on to before it slips through your fingers. So here's the truth. Most people never question. If love is supposed to be something pure and uplifting, why does it hurt so much? The answer lies in something we rarely talk about: the difference between love and attachment. Love versus attachment, the critical difference. At first glance, love and attachment can feel exactly the same. Both make your heart race. Both make you think about someone constantly. Both create a deep emotional connection. But beneath the surface, they come from completely different places. Love is freedom. It's the ability to care about someone deeply without trying to control them. It's wanting their happiness, and even if it doesn't always involve you. It's choosing them, not needing them. Love says, I want you in my life, but I don't depend on you to feel whole. Attachment, on the other hand, is fear. It's the fear of losing, the fear of being alone, the fear of not being enough without someone else. Attachment says, I need you in my life, because without you, I don't feel okay. And that small difference, wanting versus needing, changes everything. Because when you want someone, you can love them freely. But when you need someone, you begin to hold on too tightly. And that's when suffering begins. Why we get attached so easily. If attachment causes so much pain, why do we fall into it so easily? The answer is simple. It's deeply human. At our core, we all have a natural desire to feel connected, to feel seen, to feel valued. But for many of us, that need didn't always get fully met. growing up. Maybe you didn't always feel understood. Maybe love felt inconsistent. Maybe you learned, without realizing it, that love could be taken away. So now, when someone gives you attention, affection, validation, it feels incredibly powerful. Your brain lights up. You feel alive. You feel chosen. And slowly, without noticing, you start to rely on that person for your emotional stability. Their messages become your mood. Their attention becomes your self-worth. Their presence becomes your sense of security. And that's how attachment quietly takes over. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. The subtle signs of attachment. The tricky part about attachment is that it doesn't always look unhealthy at first. In fact, it often feels like passion. But if you look closer, there are clear signs. You feel anxious when they don't respond quickly. You overanalyze their words and actions. You constantly need reassurance that they still care. You feel jealous or threatened easily. You start to lose touch with your own life, your own priorities, your own sense of self, and perhaps the biggest sign of all, you're more afraid of losing them than you are focused on genuinely loving them. That's not love. That's fear, wearing the mask of love. The illusion. We've been sold. Part of the reason we confuse attachment with love is because society reinforces it. We celebrate relationships where people are obsessed with each other. We admire stories where someone can't live without another person. We equate intensity with depth. But intensity is not the same as love. Intensity can come from insecurity, from uncertainty, from emotional highs and lows. Real love, on the other hand, is much quieter. It doesn't make you feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster. It doesn't leave you constantly questioning where you stand. It doesn't demand that you sacrifice yourself to keep it. Real love feels safe, stable, grounded. But because we're so used to chaos, we often mistake calmness for boredom and instability for passion. And that's how we keep repeating the same cycle. A moment of reflection. So take a moment and ask yourself honestly, is what I'm feeling bringing me peace or anxiety? Am I free to be myself in this connection? Or am I constantly trying to hold on to it? Am I loving this person? Or am I afraid of losing them? These questions aren't easy, but they reveal a truth that can completely change the way you experience relationships. Soft call to action. If any part of this resonates with you, if you've ever felt confused about love, attachment, and why relationships can feel so overwhelming, you're not alone. And more importantly, This is something you can understand and transform. Make sure to subscribe to Buddha Flash, where we explore the deeper truths of the mind, emotions, and what it really means to live and love freely. Because once you see the difference between love and attachment, you can never unsee it. And that's where everything begins to change. The hidden cost of attachment, why it leads to suffering. Now that we've uncovered the difference between love and attachment, we need to face a deeper question. If attachment feels so strong, so real, so irresistible, why does it hurt so much? Why does something that begins with excitement and connection often turn into anxiety, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion? The answer lies in the hidden cost of attachment, a cost most people don't recognize until they're already overwhelmed by it. The emotional weight you didn't notice. At first, attachment feels good. It gives you a sense of closeness, a sense of belonging, a sense that someone truly matters to you, and you matter to them. But slowly, that feeling begins to change. You start checking your phone more often. You start wondering what they're thinking. You start needing small signs of reassurance. A message, a call, a certain tone. And when those things don't come, something shifts. Your mind starts racing. Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? Is there someone else? What used to feel like connection now feels like uncertainty. And that uncertainty creates anxiety. Not because something is necessarily wrong, but because attachment has made your emotional state dependent on something outside of you. When love turns into control, one of the most subtle and dangerous effects of attachment is control. Not always obvious control, not always intentional control, but control nonetheless. When you become attached, you begin to feel responsible for maintaining the relationship at all costs. You want to know where they are, who they're with, what they're doing, how they feel about you, all the time. You may not say it out loud, but internally, you're trying to reduce uncertainty. Because uncertainty feels like danger. So you start adjusting your behavior. You text more carefully. You hold back your opinions. You overthink your actions. That's all in an attempt to keep the connection stable. But here's the truth. The more you try to control a relationship, the less natural it becomes. And ironically, the more you push the other person away. The paradox of attachment. This is where attachment becomes a trap. Because the very thing you're trying to protect is the thing your behavior is slowly destroying. You hold on tighter because you're afraid to lose them. But that tight grip creates pressure. You seek constant reassurance. But that neediness creates distance. You try to secure love through control. But love cannot exist where control dominates. So the more attached you become, the more fragile the relationship feels. And the more fragile it feels, the more attached you become. It's a cycle, a quiet, exhausting cycle that feeds on itself. A story you might recognize. Imagine someone who falls deeply in love. At first, everything feels effortless. Conversations flow. Laughter comes easily. There's excitement, curiosity, connection. But over time, something changes. They begin to care more. They begin to fear more. They start noticing small shifts. A delayed reply, a shorter message, a change in tone. And suddenly, their mind fills in the gaps. They start asking more questions. They start needing more reassurance. They start reacting emotionally to things that never bothered them before. The other person feels it, the pressure, the intensity, the unspoken expectation. And slowly, they begin to pull away. Not because they stopped caring, but because the connection no longer feels free. Eventually, the relationship ends, and the person left behind is confused. I loved them so much. Why did it fall apart? But the truth is, it didn't fall apart because of love. It fell apart because of attachment, the psychological root of suffering. At its core, attachment is driven by the ego, not ego in the sense of arrogance, but ego as the part of you that seeks identity, control, and security. The ego wants certainty. It wants to know, where do I stand? Am I enough? Will this last? And when it doesn't get clear answers, it creates fear. So it tries to fix that fear by holding on tighter, by analyzing more, by seeking more validation. But this approach only deepens the problem, because real love doesn't come from the ego. It comes from presence. When you're present, you don't need to control the future. You don't need constant reassurance. You don't need to turn love into something predictable. You simply experience it. But attachment pulls you out of the present moment. It puts your mind in the future, worrying about loss, or in the past, analyzing what went wrong. And in doing so, it takes away your ability to actually enjoy the relationship. The real cost: losing yourself. Perhaps the most painful cost of attachment isn't the anxiety, or the overthinking, or even the heartbreak. It's the slow loss of yourself. When you become deeply attached, your focus shifts. Your happiness becomes tied to someone else's actions. Your sense of worth becomes dependent on their attention. Your identity becomes entangled with the relationship. You stop asking, what do I want? What makes me happy? What kind of life do I want to build? And instead, everything revolves around, how do I keep this person? And in that process, you abandon the most important relationship you have, the one with yourself. The truth most people avoid. Here's a truth that can be difficult to accept. Attachment doesn't come from loving someone too much. It comes from not feeling whole on your own. When you feel complete within yourself, love becomes something you share, not something you depend on. But when you feel incomplete, love becomes something you cling to, something you fear losing, something you try to secure at all costs. And that's where suffering begins, and a shift in awareness. The goal isn't to stop loving. The goal isn't to become distant or detached in a cold, emotionless way. The goal is to see clearly, to recognize when love is coming from a place of fullness, and when it's coming from a place of fear. Because once you see that difference, you begin to change the way you show up in relationships, not by forcing anything, but by understanding. And that understanding is the first step toward something deeper, a kind of love that doesn't create anxiety, a kind of connection that doesn't require control, a kind of presence that doesn't fear loss. In the next part, we'll explore exactly how to get there, how to let go of attachment without losing love, and how to experience relationships in a way that feels free, grounded, and real. Letting go without losing love. The art of loving freely. So if attachment creates fear, anxiety, and suffering, does that mean we should stop loving? Should we become distant, guarded, or emotionally unavailable just to protect ourselves? Not at all. Because the goal is not to love less. The goal is to love better, to love in a way that feels free instead of fearful, grounded instead of overwhelming, peaceful instead of painful. And that begins with a powerful shift in how you understand love itself. Redefining what love really means. Most people grow up believing that love is about possession. You're mine. I belong to you. We can't live without each other. It sounds romantic, but hidden inside those words is a subtle sense of ownership. And ownership creates pressure, because the moment you believe someone belongs to you, you start fearing the possibility of losing them. But real love doesn't work that way. Real love says, I choose you, but I don't own you. I care about you, but I don't control you. I appreciate your presence, but I don't depend on it to feel complete. That shift from ownership to appreciation changes everything. Because When you stop trying to possess love, you finally allow it to breathe. The courage to let go. Letting go of attachment doesn't mean letting go of the person. It means letting go of the fear around them, the fear of losing them, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being alone. And that takes courage, because attachment feels like safety. Even when it's painful, it feels familiar. It feels like something you can hold on to. But the truth is, attachment is not safety. It's dependency disguised as connection. Real safety comes from within, from knowing that no matter what happens in your relationships, you will still be okay. And when you reach that place, you stop clinging. Not because you don't care, but because you no longer need to hold on so tightly. Turning awareness into transformation. So how do you actually shift from attachment to love? It starts with awareness. You begin to notice your patterns. You notice when you feel anxious, waiting for a message. You notice when your mood depends on someone else's behavior. You notice when fear starts to take over, and instead of reacting immediately, you pause. That pause is powerful because it creates space between your emotion and your action. In that space, you can choose differently. Instead of sending another message out of anxiety, you take a breath. Instead of overanalyzing, you return to the present moment. Instead of seeking reassurance, you remind yourself, I am already enough. These small shifts may seem simple, but over time, they change everything. Building a strong relationship with yourself. The less you rely on someone else to feel whole, the more freely you can love them. That's why one of the most important steps in letting go of attachment is reconnecting with yourself. Spending time alone, not as loneliness, but as self-connection. Rediscovering what brings you joy outside of a relationship, as setting boundaries that protect your emotional well-being. Because when your life is full, when your identity is strong, when your happiness doesn't depend on one person, you stop loving from a place of lack and start loving from a place of abundance. Emotional independence, the key to freedom. Emotional independence doesn't mean you don't care. It means your emotional state isn't controlled by someone else. You can still love deeply, still feel connected, still value the relationship. But you're not constantly shaken by every small change. You don't collapse when they pull away. You don't panic when things feel uncertain. You don't lose yourself trying to keep them. Instead, you remain centered, grounded, at peace, regardless of what's happening externally. And that kind of energy changes how people experience you. Because when you're not clinging, you become easier to be with. when you're not demanding constant reassurance, how the connection feels lighter. When you're not trying to control the outcome, the relationship has space to grow naturally. The freedom of true love. Here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop holding on so tightly is the moment love starts to feel real. Because without attachment, you don't fear losing them. You appreciate them. You don't try to control them. You trust them. You don't lose yourself. You stay grounded in who you are. Love becomes something you experience, not something you struggle to maintain. It becomes calm, steady, real. And even if one day it ends, it doesn't break you in the same way, because you were never depending on it to define you. You were simply sharing it. A truth that changes everything. So remember this: love doesn't create suffering. Attachment does. Love doesn't trap you. Attachment does. Love doesn't make you lose yourself. Attachment does. And once you truly understand this, you begin to approach relationships differently, but with more awareness, more balance, more peace. Final reflection. Imagine what your life would feel like if you could love without fear, if you could care deeply, without constantly worrying about loss. If you could connect with someone without losing yourself in the process. That's not a fantasy. That's what love looks like when it's free from attachment. And it starts with you. Call to action. If this message resonated with you, if it helped you see love and attachment in a new way, make sure to subscribe to Buddha Flash for more insights on the mind, emotions, and how to live with clarity and inner peace. And I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever mistaken attachment for love? What did that experience teach you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else see things more clearly too.